The great thing about working with artists that have become successful, and remember, when I started working with people, they weren't famous yet. They weren't successful yet. I've never worked with somebody who was already successful to get them to the next level. Everybody that I've worked with started out as just another person who wanted to rap or sing or do whatever they do. And I've gotten to meet some really great people, and I've really learned some great lessons from people. I've been very fortunate because when I was doing Twista's deal, I was able to reach out to Too Short and I was able to reach out to E40 to find out what they did to get their deals at Jive. And I did that because Jive was the first label that wanted to sign Do or Die and Twista. So they were the first label that I was negotiating with. So what I did was I reached out to other people in the culture that were already signed to that label to find out, okay, what do you like? What do you not like? How did you get your deal? How much money did you get when you did your deal? What is it that if you could change something about that label, what would you change? If you could change something about your deal, what would you change? So I've always been fortunate to learn from people that have come before me. And one of the things that I learned from Master P's camp was incredible marketing. Like nobody had done it the way he did it. He was wrapping bus benches in the hood. He was wrapping garbage trucks in the hood. Like he was just on some next level shit. He was putting out projects every 6 weeks, like Beats by the Pound were just constantly cooking up beats, constantly cooking up beats. And then he was putting out CDs, and all of his CDs had a similar look to them. So you knew when you saw them, the Pen and Pixel was the company that was designing them. So when you saw the cover, you knew it was the new No Limit shit. And because he had put out so many great albums in a row, like he could have like put shit in a bag and put a Pen and Pixel logo on it and people would have bought it because he had built trust in his brand like that. And he would put ads inside of the actual CDs. So when you popped open the CD and it was the new, I don't know, Fiend or See Murder or TRU or whatever, on the inside of the cover was Mia X Coming Soon, and it was her album cover. And then it was advertising Mercedes, it was advertising Mac, it was advertising, whoever else was coming next. And it was like a little assembly line of releases. And it was never like, oh, I have to go buy the new Master P album. It was like every 6 weeks you knew to go pick up the new No Limit release, whatever it was. It didn't matter because it had the sound, it had the image, it had everything that you were getting from, the releases, everything you wanted, it was right there. And he was just a master marketer. He put 3 great songs on the album and then the rest was filler. So people were spending $17.99 for an album with 17 songs that had 3 singles. And that's what they were buying. They were buying like the songs that they really liked the most and then putting it aside because 6 weeks later, here was the next release. And there were 3 singles on that they really wanted and then a bunch of filler. And even the filler was good. I'm not saying it was like, bullshit. I'm saying that he was delivering music in a very marketed way. It was just really quite brilliant. When I met Baby and Slim, I learned so much from them, but what I learned was to really put time and effort into the artist. And the difference between like No Limit and Cash Money, and this is not a diss, but Master P was signing like his brothers, his friends, his neighbors, his cousins, a stripper from Detroit that he liked. He had like a personal attachment and then was giving people record deals, or at least that's how it looked as an outsider looking in. Whereas Cash Money was really cultivating whatever was popping in New Orleans, in their city, whatever was hot, they were going and picking that up, UNLV, I'm drawing a blank, but they were signing artists based on the artistry as opposed to based on proximity and relationship, right? So they were putting out music that was equally as good, but it was the same principle. Like they were dropping music the same way P was, like every 6 weeks or so. And it was, you flipped over the album cover and you would see that sparkly, dollar sign medallion as the logo. You knew that stamp, it was just like the tank. It was a stamp of approval saying you're about to get some really great music. And, just like No Limit had Beats by the Pound, Cash Money had Manny Fresh. So it was a certain sound that you got. So as long as you loved that sound, you knew whatever was in that packaging, there was just a really good chance that you were going to enjoy it. You were going to like it. And I learned so much from that. One of the things that I brought to Cash Money is because they were dropping music so quickly, they were really just focusing on New Orleans to Houston. And because I had worked with so many artists in the Midwest, like Twista and Do or Die, I had the relationships all the way up to, Michigan and Illinois and Wisconsin. So when they were putting out music, we, instead of just staying in that I-10, highway range where they were staying, I was able to bring the music all the way over to Jacksonville and all the way up into Detroit and here in Chicago and Memphis. And it was spreading the music faster than they were spreading it, just because I already had the pipeline, the relationships. And so they started to really grow big fast right at the time that I was shopping their deal. So when I met them, they had put out 31 CDs over a 6-year period and had sold somewhere between 5,000 and 25,000 units every time they put out a release. And then the first project that I put out, because we went bigger, hit 75,000 within like 2 months of sales. So to the labels, the major labels that wanted to sign them, it looked like, oh my God, these guys are really growing really fast. And that really catapulted that deal to some next level shit. And it wasn't planned. It was just, we were doing the right thing. We were working the music to get it to grow as quickly as possible. One of the things that I learned from working with Cash Money back then was how difficult it is to get paid, for the label to get paid, and how slow the process is. Even today, it's not as difficult because there's so many distributors out here that actually will cut you a check, they'll pay you. Back in the day, they didn't. Back in the day, you could sell 300,000 CDs and your distributor hasn't paid you yet. So there's a lot of fuck shit going on. Today, you get paid because it's a little bit more legitimate in terms of the companies that are involved, but it still takes forever. Like you could have a hit record in 2018 and your publishing checks don't start coming through till like the end of 2019 or 2020. Like it takes a really long time for the money to flow through. And when you're running a small business, that matters. You got to be able to float, especially if you've got staff, you've got people to pay and you've got rent for a space, like an office space. You've got to have a constant flow of income to be able to float your company until the money starts coming in. And like with the clients we work with, we start with artists when they're almost brand new. We can work with them for 2 years before they make a dime. It's just the nature of this business. When you're building your career, it can take a long time for the money to start. And then once it starts coming in, it kind of trickles at first. Like it's a really slow build. It's not like, here's a cup of water and I'm going to go to the store and buy this for $1 and they're going to get their dollar right away. In the music industry, it takes a minute for the money to really start to flow freely. And if you're not properly funded, that can put you out of business before you can be super successful, but the money's just not coming in yet. And if you're an artist, it takes even longer to get paid because once the money starts flowing from the distributor to the label, you've got to recoup. So you've got to pay back everything that's being spent to make your album. So all the recording, all the production, all the features, any samples that's coming out of your share of the money, any marketing, any promoting, like that's all coming out of your money. So everybody else is recouping, they're making their money back. You're the last to get paid. And artists just don't realize how long it takes sometimes for that money to start flowing, if they even see it. I know so many artists who've said, yeah, I put out music, I put out such and such hit on Def Jam in 1998, and all their money came from shows. They still haven't made money on publishing or sales because they never recouped. It's crazy. So today, to build a career in music, you need consistency, and catalog is everything. So I know with my clients, we drop weekly. Like, we're putting out new music every other week. So we're putting out 26 songs, and we're marketing and promoting all of them. We don't just throw them out there and sit back and go, oh, we'll see what that does. We're actually working that music. And when I started in the music business in the 90s, that was unheard of. You would never drop music like that. And back then it was a singles market too, just like it is today. So we would put out a single, and then we'd work it for like 6 to 12 months to blow it up. And then another single would come out, and then we'd put the artist out on tour, right? So the artist was dropping music in order to set up a tour, because that's how the artist would make money. And today we don't do that. Like, today we just drop music every other week, and we let the artist tour when there is enough response to that body of work for them to start getting paid for shows. It's a very different way of breaking artists today. And I think one of the great things, for me anyway, from coming from both worlds, is that I combine the best of both worlds. Like, my artists still go out and touch people and feel people. We'll do promo tours. And my artists all go out. We'll pick like a 5-hour driving radius, and they'll go and work all of those markets, and they'll promote online. They'll still do all the influencer marketing. We'll still run Google and Facebook ads. We'll still do all the digital shit and drop all of the content, daily on Instagram and Twitter and TikTok. But we also go into the marketplace so that fans that want to interact, face to face, can do so. And they'll take pictures with the artist. We'll always have like a film crew out there with them to record what's going on, even if it's just iPhone. Like, it doesn't have to be, Martin Scorsese following the artist around filming. It can just be some basic shit from somebody on your team that can, hold an iPhone and edit pretty well. But today, you've got to be able to stand out from everybody else that's out there. And when I was coming up, the competition for music was really just, television, sports, music. It wasn't as competitive. Today, there's video games, there's the internet. You're competing against so much. And it's not just music that you're competing against. It's really time. Anything somebody does in their free time is your competition, because you want them to be listening to your music instead of, talking on the phone, or instead of surfing the web, or instead of watching video tutorials or how-tos, or, whatever it is somebody watches, or playing a video game. You really want somebody to be engrossed in your music. And it's just, we're competing for eyeballs now. It's really very much, the world is our competition. Life is our competition.